Okay,
And I think there are reasons for that. But I am in favor of this.
Can I ask you a yes or no?
Yes or no?
Ready? Can we play that game again?
Yes. Did I
Should
get it right?
Americans be required to have ID to vote? Chris, yes or no?
No. And I'll tell you why.
Chris, here's a question. You and I run a nightclub.
Yes.
Okay, it's 21 and over.
Need an ID.
Why?
Because otherwise you can't tell whether they're over 21. And they're worried about the liability.
What about you
show
can't
me
tell
the
whether
proof?
they're American?
Show me proof.
Listen,
Show me proof.
I get the arguments. I get what the arguments are.
This is no, Chris. This to me is more.
Yes.
No, it's common sense.
All right, folks. So the other day, Patrick Bet David had Chris Cuomo and Candace Owens in a sort of roundtable town hall debate to discuss politics. And if you're not familiar, if you just remember Chris Cuomo from the CNN days, Chris now, ever since he got fired, it's funny, every time a CNN anchor leaves, they suddenly play this centrist act where they're like, well, maybe I can have a little bit more nuanced views on politics, and I'm not super liberal on everything, I just want to unite the country. Isn't that so funny? Because every time when they were on CNN, all they were generic liberal talking heads, but once they leave, it almost goes to show you that maybe what they were saying on air, not that they necessarily didn't believe it during their CNN career, but it was a little bit of a grift. It was a little bit exaggerated and insincere. I don't know. Regardless, as you know, Chris recently has been trying to do that whole centrist thing where he says he's open to voting for Trump. He might consider it, this and that. I have nuanced views on everything, right? But they end up having this debate about the issue of voter ID. Okay, the idea, should you have to show photo identification to cast your ballot when you show up to vote? Okay, now think what you will about the election system itself and whatever. Okay, there's open room for debate on that front, and I lean very conservative on it, obviously, but I can understand at least the argument that people make. Hey, voting should be more accessible. Hey, there should be early voting. People should be able to vote by mail. I don't agree necessarily with those arguments, but I understand why people believe them to some degree, even though, as we know, they are arguably a very open door to that certain F word. However, on the issue of should you have to show a photo ID to vote, I don't think that there's really room for debate there, because the other side doesn't make any... to me, that seems like it should be a common sense issue. You know, you have to show a government ID to get on a plane, to get into a bar, or to buy alcohol, or to do all sorts... to buy cough medicine at the pharmacy, okay? But to vote, like, you don't have to verify who you are? That seems absolutely insane. You would think the new centrist Chris Cuomo would at least agree with that part of it. You know, we can disagree on mail-in voting and all that stuff. But no, take a listen to what Chris has to say here. And I'll tell you something too. Chris is not a politician. That's obviously his brother. But Chris Cuomo, you know, you really should consider entering politics, because you are such a, you know, talk around in circles, evasive, just slimy. It actually reminds me a lot of Gavin Newsom, okay? Listen to what Chris has to say about this, and then everything he says, he tries to frame it as, oh, it's an intellectual take, it's nuance, you guys just don't understand. No, you're not an intellectual, you're actually just an idiot. Listen to what Chris has to say. Candace Owens pushes back. It's hilarious.
So 16 out of 50 states in America do not require an ID to vote. Those 16 out of 50 states, Rob, if you can pull this up, those 16 out of 50 states have 212 of the electoral votes out of the 538. Let me say it again. The 16 out of 50 states, you have no need to go like this and walk in when you're voting to say, hey, can you please pull out your ID and do one of these things? Nope, you don't have to do it. They're not asking for your ID. They could care less about your ID. 212. Now watch this. 11 out of 50 states.
Which is literally just insane. You should have to show your driver's license to show up to vote. Again, this, I think, should be a very common sense issue. You know, the only reason genuinely why anyone could justify not doing this is just because they want to allow cheating, okay? Because, again, if you want to discuss mail-in voting, you know, the liberal could say, oh, well, I want people to have more access to voting or something like that. Again, I disagree, but I get the argument somewhat. Photo ID is like universal. That's common sense. It shouldn't even be debatable, but here you go.
Don't require a photo ID. You can just give an ID, but no photo. Did you guys understand me so far? Those 11 out of 50 states that don't require a photo ID to vote have 69 electoral votes out of the 538. 69 plus 212, it's a sweep forever for the left. Just so you know this. This is not me telling you this. This is the government telling you this, what our guidelines are by states today. And the rest, 23 out of 50 states, only 23, less than 50% of our states actually require to go like this. How pathetic is that, Chris, to have something like that? You don't have to be a left, right, or a center person to say that doesn't make sense. What are your 100%. Thoughts on this, the way we're voting today?
There's a lot that goes to it. You know, you have half the representation of the U.S. government represents 1/3 of the population. Why? Because of how we do it with the Senate and redistricting rules and stuff like that. So there's a fundamental imbalance.
Already, you see the politician thing I'm talking about. He's just yapping about unrelated things.
Voter ID.
Okay.
Here are the two arguments, and you can assess them how you want. Is it that, I forget how it was explained earlier, but I don't know that it's that the government, whatever that means, if you want to ascribe it all to one groupthink, doesn't trust blacks or think minorities are capable of or whatever. But the argument is that culturally, socioeconomically, as you go down in terms of the poverty level, as poverty becomes more important, there's less connection with government. There's less percentage of people who want to interface with government and who have identification. So the argument is, if you say you need an ID to vote, you will have an unfair bias against those strata of society that don't tend to get IDs and don't want to deal with government.
Okay, but I just have.
I'm just saying.
Again, that's just completely ridiculous. Poor people have IDs, okay? Newsflash, they do. And secondly, you want to, interface, they have less desirability to interact with government. Fine, then don't vote. Who said that they need to vote? If they don't care enough to get an ID, then they shouldn't even be voting anyway. What are you going to, you know nothing about politics, you don't care, you have no stake, but check out a box because it's fun or something like that. Why do you want those people voting in your quote-unquote democracy anyway? But again, it's just a myth. Okay, this is just a myth. That, poor people don't have IDs. Black people don't have IDs. Yes, they do. Everyone has an ID.
Saying that is the argument.
No, it's not an argument to lie, okay? Because it's not about, you don't get an ID because you want to engage with government. You get an ID because you want to drive. You get an ID because you're 19
right.
and you're 21 and you want to have your first drink. You get an ID because you quite literally need an ID to do so many things in society.
That's true.
So forget it. You wouldn't say that people that are in a lower socioeconomic class are never drinking, are never driving, are never doing all of the other things that are required, never seeing a movie, like, you know.
In fact, by stats, they probably do that stuff a lot more. I would guess, right?
Oh, that's above PG-16. You need an ID to do so much in life. So you're focusing, this is the lie. You're saying, well, they don't tend to vote. That might be true. That might definitely be true.
No, they don't tend to have IDs. That's not why they're getting an ID. That's not why they're getting an ID. So I understand.
They're just lying.
I understand. I don't think it's a lie. It could be wrong. It could be a false assumption.
If it's wrong, then it's a lie. If you keep saying it, if it's wrong and you keep saying it, it becomes a lie, right?
No, that's only
There's no black people that are not getting their IDs. I came from a low socioeconomic background. I got my driver's license when I was 16 years old because I wanted to drive and pick up my boyfriend.
I get it. And
those are the reasons people get IDs. That's simple. I love you too.
I get it. What I'm saying is,
it's just like Chris will just continue here with the folk sophistication. No, it doesn't make you sophisticated. This is not a particularly nuanced issue. It's pretty common sense. Unless you want to, do you want to make the argument that, hey, airlines, again, forget even alcohol, right? airlines or buying certain medicines at the pharmacy over the counter, or even, getting prescription drugs or stuff like it. If that does that also hurt the socioeconomically disadvantaged because they don't have IDs? Oh, wait, socioeconomically disadvantaged people also have IDs.
Two things can be true at once. The argument is exactly what I'm saying it is, okay? The reason the big states don't have it is because of this argument, that they say that there is a disproportionate impact on people from lower socioeconomic rungs that do not get it. One, we do know for a fact that poor people that live in more populated areas drive at a much lower rate than other people, so maybe they don't have the license. That's the argument. I'm not saying you have to value the argument. The other argument is we need IDs for everything that we do. Why would we do this? The argument now to your question, which is why don't we do it online? Okay, so I ran with this idea. Like 7 years ago, when we came out of the hanging Chad thing that allowed me to spend a great amount of my time in your state, in Jacksonville specifically, about the hanging Chads, the 2000 election and all, I was like, wow, this is such a stupid system. Why don't we just do this the way everything in my life is on here? Pay my mortgage, my money doesn't exist. Right? I mean, I don't have, I'm not my grandparents. I don't have 50 Savarin cans, which was an instant coffee, in my basement that has my savings in it. I don't put money under my mattress. I don't even know where it is. And I'm okay with that. But we can't vote. And I got crushed by all of these security and intelligence people saying, oh, the fraud that would happen, the chance of fraud. And I said, but we have like the easiest system to beat in the world. The stat they hit me with was the vote.
Okay, Chris. Now I agree with you. Yes, doing elections over the internet may create a lot of room for fraud. However, if they're not going to require photo IDs to vote, then what do you think is the logical equation there?
Voter ID states do not have better rates, or let's say lower rates of voter fraud than the states without ID.
Okay, listen to voter ID states do not have lower or less rates of fraud than non-voter ID states. Okay. Might it be possible, Chris Cuomo, that again, the point some of us are actually making here is when you don't have voter ID, a lot of fraud goes undetected? Because the fraud rate, quote unquote, is how much fraud gets caught. Okay? So that stat also doesn't really mean anything.
So it doesn't really make a difference.
That is the fraud. that is
but
right.
I'm saying that's what I'm saying. I ran with this. I believe in this. I believe that voting should be as easy and immediate as possible. I think that voting should not be one day. I think that voting, if it is going to be on that one day should be a vacation day for everybody in America so that they can go out and vote. I believe in early voting. I believe in online voting. I believe that we should have as many people voting as possible so we make it as easy as possible. Now, I'm going to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. But that's not my problem. It is not even this issue. It's not both sides of the aisle. The right, until voter ID, has consistently been against anything that would increase who votes.
Okay,
I think there are reasons for that. But I am in favor of this.
Can I ask you a yes or no?
Yes or no?
Ready? Can we play that game again?
Yes. Did I get it
Should
right? Americans
be required to have ID to vote? Chris, yes or no?
Which again, he never answered that. Okay, he's been shifting around the question. He just says, "Whoa, there's two sides to this argument, and here's what I say." And yapping. Okay, he's such like I said, Chris Cuomo. I'm just speaking candidly here. You'd be an amazing politician. You really would. You take after your brother, don't you? He can't answer it. Wow.
No, and I'll tell you why.
Wow.
I'll tell you why. Until I see fraud rates that go along with the distinction, I don't believe that you make a simple pitch. Then my answer is no. And my answer is no because I don't believe that I don't believe you want the government having even more control over who can vote and who can't.
Okay, so okay.
Okay, then let's take that logic to another level then. Should you have to show photo ID to get on an airplane? Chris would probably say, well, yeah, terrorism, right? Wait a minute, Chris. I don't see terrorism rates that equate that is necessary, because most people who get on planes are not terrorists. Like 99.99% of people who get on an airplane every day are not terrorists. Like, well, that doesn't even make any sense. Forget even the fraud rates, which we just explained earlier why that's a faulty statistic, because part of our point is, well, if you don't have voter ID, how do you know what's going on that's legitimate and what's not? Forget that even. It's just the principle of it. I mean, frankly, it's just the principle of it. You have to show ID to do so many things in this country. Voting should be self-explanatory why you have to show an ID. Even if it was very rare, even if it was like one person every single year in America that took advantage of photo ID to commit voter fraud, which I'd have to imagine is more people than that, even if it was just one person every single year or 0 people, I would still say it should just be standard practice because it makes sense and it's common sense, you know?
That's fine. I'm glad you're being honest. I just want to say, if you are a Black or Hispanic American, please find me the Black or Hispanic American who does not work, because you need an ID to get a W-T form, get set up. They ask you for your ID, who does not vote, who does not drink, who does not drive or drive somebody else's car. This person does not exist. It does not travel. You can't get on a plane without it. This person does not exist, okay?
Yep.
So it is the lie that they tell so that they can rig our elections by having a bunch of people who are not Americans coming in and voting. And by the way, everybody knows that, okay?
How can you know what we've never been shown? Where is the fraud? Where are the fake votes?
And the idea that any person will get up and say to you that they do not believe that you should have an ID to vote. I'm not even gonna characterize what you just said.
But you backed it up by saying that we know that all these people vote who aren't supposed to. Where's the proof of that?
We understand the voting rolls. There's dead people on the voting rolls, and this has been proven
every time they measure this with billions and billions of vote checks. And anybody here or Magic Rob, go up and find different for me on the internet. They look and they see that the amount of fraud in elections is de minimis, which is beyond a level of action. We just went through.
Even that, if that's the case, let's go back to my airplane analogy. It's a very reasonable thing to just have as standard practice, okay? Standard practice. I'm renting a car tomorrow for spring break. I have to show my ID. Why? Standard practice. Why can't that be standard practice for voting? It just makes sense if that's what we do for everything else in this country. And voting, to me, and determining who is in charge of our government, that seems more than important enough to have, again, IDs as standard practice.
Through this.
Okay, let me ask a question a different way.
Chris,
hang on. Let me ask a question a different way. Let me ask a question a different way. Chris, here's a question. You and I run a nightclub.
Yes.
Okay, it's 21 and over.
Need an ID.
Why?
Because otherwise you can't tell whether they're over 21.
Whoa,
and they're worried about the liability.
What?
Show me the proof. Show me proof.
Listen,
Show me proof.
I get the arguments. I get what the arguments are.
This is no, Chris. This to me is more.
Yes.
No, this
makes no sense.
It's common sense. It's for me to. Okay.
So why do you think that they don't do it again? Because you think, so you agree with Candace that the reason they don't require ID is because they want a lot of illegal votes and to manipulate the system.
A lot of...
And all the watchdogs from the right that follow this issue have just never been able to prove it?
Well, you're racist if you say something.
Of everything Candace said about IDs, was for me to be able to get a driver's license, for me to be able to get a drink, for me to be able to do this, for me to be able to do that.
I agree.
For me, it's a different reason on why you need a driver. It's for me to know who the hell you are. It's very different.
I totally get it.
I'm not interested in what, all that stuff that I get to do selfishly because I need the ID to do that. No. When you came in here right now, we have friends we respect a lot and we respect our guests. Did you guys all come through a metal detective, yes or no? Do you know how many cops and sheriff are around here right now? You know how much we spend on security right now to make sure they're safe and nobody can come in here where you're safe as well? Now, we're doing our part. We invest the resources there. Sheriff is very good with us. Cops are very good with us. But did you guys come in here? Did somebody walk you through, find out, verify, checking who you are, what you're doing? We have to do that. We got to go through that process.
I totally get it.
And by the way, This is not 1/1,000,000th of as important as an election, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
This is just a podcast
Exactly.
and a conversation. So for us to sit there and say, you know, the idea isn't that important, brother, you're a very, very, people from your community and others will hear what you have to say, and they may go with that as well. In a country without IDs and without being checked, you're not a country. You're not even a country club. You're not even a village. I don't even know what to call you, but you're definitely not a country.
Again, we're a constitutional republic. That's right. You know, less than 5% of Americans get their
Banana Republic. He said Banana
Chris,
Republic.
it's also, it's not like they're hiding. When Biden comes in, opens the border with Mayorkas the rat doing his dirty work, how many in the past 3 years we've had more illegals come into the country than children being born? Okay.
December of last year was more coming in than children being born.
And this is where it's that window of, I understand that the proof is when they're coming in, they're wearing Biden shirts and being told, we're voting for him because they're telling us to. Then Biden they admitted.
Then they'll be easy to catch.
Yeah, well, hold on though. Well, yeah, those 4. But think about this.
All right. I think you guys basically get the point. Okay? Like, Chris Cuomo's argument just doesn't make any sense. What else is there to say? It doesn't make any sense. Even he, to an extent, seems to know it doesn't make any sense. Because notice how once he gets pressed on his stance, he doesn't even really care to defend it. He actually sounds a little defeated. He's like, I understand. Yeah. Like, what's going on there? I don't know. All I know is that was not, of all the words he said, of all the talking he did about the various perspectives on this issue and this philosophy and that philosophy and voter fraud, right? It was a very unintelligent thing when you broke it down that he just said. Okay? Barely made any sense. And, I mean, just look at this expression. Look at him. I think even he knows what he's saying doesn't even make any sense. It's true. That said, folks, let me know your thoughts on this little panel. This was Friday. Down in the comment section down below. And be sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, Alpha moves only. God bless. Have a very great rest of your evening and peace.